She was 22 and sleeping inside her car beside a cold fishing harbor. Most nights, the sound of waves hitting the docks kept her awake more than the hunger did. The windows of the old blue sedan barely closed anymore. Wind slipped through the cracked rubber lining and carried the smell of salt, rust, and dead seaweed in the back seat, where she slept curled beneath two thin blankets. Her name was Nora Hale. 3 months earlier, she still had an apartment, a job, a future that looked ordinary enough to trust. Now she counted coins inside gas station bathrooms and washed her face in public sinks before sunrise. The only thing left from her old life was a faded canvas backpack and a small brass key her grandfather once told her never to throw away. When Nora saw the listing online for an abandoned lighthouse keeper's house on the northern coast selling for $10 through Forgotten County auction, she thought it had to be fake. The house had no electricity, no plumbing, no nearby town for miles. People said storms had nearly pulled the cliff beneath it into the sea. But something about the photograph stopped her. The narrow windows, the white peeling walls, and the strange shadow near the fireplace that looked almost like a doorway hidden behind plaster. So she spent the last money she had, $10, on a house nobody wanted. But what she didn't know was, someone had spent decades hiding something inside those walls. And the closer Nora came to uncovering it, the more her grandfather's silence began to make sense. Before we continue, if stories like this make you feel something, stories about forgotten places, second chances, and the quiet things people leave behind, take a moment to subscribe. And while you listen, tell me in the comments, what's one old object you could never throw away, no matter how little it seemed worth? Because sometimes the smallest things carry entire lives inside them. Nora grew up in a small coastal town where winters felt endless. The kind of place where paint peeled from houses faster than people could afford to fix it. Her grandfather, Walter Hale, lived at the edge of town in a weather-beaten cottage that always smelled faintly of cedar wood, pipe smoke, and machine oil. He rarely talked about himself, but his hands told stories. Thick scars across his fingers, burn marks near his wrists, tiny cuts that never fully healed. When Nora was little, she used to sit beside him in the workshop behind his house, while rain tapped softly against the windows. He repaired watches, old clocks too, sometimes broken radios. People from nearby towns brought him things nobody else could fix anymore. Walter always worked in silence. Ticking clocks filled the room like tiny heartbeats. Nora loved that sound, especially at night, because after her father disappeared and her mother started working double shifts at the diner, silence inside their own home felt heavy instead of peaceful. But Walter's silence felt different. Safe, steady. He taught Nora strange little habits. How to listen for hollow wood by tapping gently with her knuckles. How old homes settled during cold weather. How salt air slowly swallowed metal. And how some people hid important things in places nobody would think to search. Walls remember people, he once told her quietly while repairing a brass pocket watch. Nora laughed at the time, but Walter didn't. He just kept polishing the tiny gears beneath the lamplight. As Nora grew older, she began noticing something strange. Whenever storms rolled in from the sea, her grandfather became distant, restless. He would sit on the porch staring toward the northern cliffs where the abandoned lighthouse stood far beyond town, sometimes for hours. Once, when Nora was 14, she asked him why. Walter only said, "Some places keep echoes longer than others." Then he changed the subject. Years later, Nora would remember that sentence constantly, especially after finding the house. Nora's mother, Elaine, hated talking about the lighthouse. The moment its name came up, tension filled the room. Nothing good ever came from that place, she would mutter while washing dishes too hard against the sink. Nora never understood why. The lighthouse itself had shut down decades earlier after modern navigation replaced it. But rumors stayed alive. People claimed a keeper vanished there during a winter storm in the late 70s. Others said smugglers once used the cliffs beneath it during Prohibition years. Children at school whispered stories about hidden tunnels under the rocks. Most people avoided the area completely. Walter never confirmed any of it. But sometimes Nora caught him staring at an old black and white photograph hidden inside his workshop drawer. In the picture stood 3 men outside the lighthouse keeper's house. One of them was Walter, young, thin, serious-eyed, and standing beside him was another man with dark hair and a heavy coat Nora had never seen before. The third figure had been scratched out entirely, not torn, scratched, as if someone wanted the face erased forever. Whenever Nora asked about it, Walter closed the drawer immediately. That was a long time ago. He would say nothing more. Then came the winter, everything changed. Walter died quietly in his sleep during a snowstorm. No dramatic goodbye, no final speech, just silence. After the funeral, Nora helped clean his workshop. Inside an old toolbox, she found a brass key. Small, heavy, worn smooth from age. Attached was a tiny tag with faded handwriting. For the wall. That was it. No explanation. Nora kept the key anyway. Years passed. Life became louder. Bills, jobs, rent, relationships that almost became something real before falling apart. Eventually, Nora stopped thinking about the lighthouse. Stopped thinking about Walter's strange warnings. Until the day her life collapsed. The cafe where she worked shut down suddenly after the owner declared bankruptcy. Her landlord gave her 2 weeks to leave. Friends offered sympathy, but not much else. And little by little, Nora found herself sleeping in her car near the harbor. Cold nights became normal. So did loneliness. Then one evening, while scrolling through county foreclosure listings using free library internet, she saw it. Abandoned lighthouse keeper's house. Minimum bid $10. The attached photo made her stomach tighten instantly, because hanging beside the fireplace, barely visible in the image, was the exact same shape as the brass key in her backpack. The drive north took almost 5 hours. Rain followed her nearly the entire way. The farther Nora traveled, the emptier the roads became. Forests swallowed the highways. Fog drifted low across the cliffs. By sunset, even the radio lost signal. She almost turned back twice. The final road, leading to the lighthouse house, barely looked used anymore. Gravel cracked beneath her tires, while weeds brushed against the sides of the car. Then she saw it. The lighthouse tower stood against the gray sky like a ghost. Tall, faded, watching the ocean in silence. Below it sat the keeper's house, smaller than she expected. The roof sagged slightly near one corner. White paint peeled from the walls in long strips that fluttered in the wind. Several windows were boarded shut. Others stared dark and empty toward the sea. Nora parked slowly. For a moment, she simply sat there gripping the steering wheel. The ocean crashed violently beneath the cliffs below. No nearby houses. No lights. No voices. Just wind. She suddenly understood why nobody wanted this place. Even stepping out of the car felt wrong somehow. The cold air carried a strange smell. Salt, wet wood, and something older beneath it, like dust trapped for decades. Inside, the house creaked constantly. Every step echoed. Furniture still remained in certain rooms beneath white sheets. A rusted kettle sat abandoned in the kitchen. One bedroom contained children's wallpaper faded nearly gray from time. But the strangest thing was the silence. Not peaceful silence. Waiting silence. As if the house noticed her too. Then Nora reached the fireplace and saw it clearly. A narrow outline beneath the cracked plaster beside the bricks. Almost invisible. Exactly the same shape as the brass key. Her chest tightened. Slowly, she removed the key from her backpack. But before inserting it, she heard something upstairs. A single heavy thump. Nora froze. The house became silent again. Completely silent. She told herself it was only the wind. Old houses made sounds. That's what Walter always said. Still, Nora slept inside the car that first night instead of the house. Rain hammered the roof while the lighthouse beam rotated weakly overhead from an automated system installed years earlier. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined footsteps above her. The next morning she returned inside with a flashlight. Dust floated through thin beams of gray sunlight. The upstairs hallway leaned slightly toward one side, as if the house itself were tired. Then she found the locked room, at the very end of the hall. Small, narrow, the door swollen from moisture, and scratched deeply near the handle. Not random scratches. Marks, like someone had tried desperately to open it years ago. The brass key didn't fit that door, but when Nora pressed her ear against the wood, she heard something faint inside. Not movement, not voices, a ticking sound. Slow, uneven, tick, tick, tick. Her heart started pounding immediately. She stepped back. Walter repaired clocks. The sound felt impossible. The house had been abandoned for decades. Yet something inside that room was still ticking. Over the next few days, Nora began cleaning slowly, mostly because staying busy kept her fear under control. She opened windows, dragged ruined furniture outside, swept years of dust from floors. But the house kept offering strange little details. A loose floorboard beneath the staircase, salt stains shaped almost like handprints near the kitchen wall. And every evening around sunset, the ticking upstairs grew louder. One afternoon, Nora discovered an old journal hidden beneath a cabinet drawer in the kitchen. Most pages were ruined by moisture, but several entries remained readable. The handwriting belonged to a man named Thomas Bell, one of the former lighthouse keepers. The entries began normally: weather reports, supply shortages, storm records. But later pages changed. The walls carry sound at night. Harold says we should leave it buried. I told him hiding it here was dangerous. Then several pages had been torn out completely. The final readable line simply said, "If anything happens to me, don't trust the third wall." Nora read the sentence 3 times. Third wall. What did that even mean? That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The fireplace downstairs, the strange outline, the ticking upstairs, and the photograph Walter kept hidden for years. Something connected all of it. She could feel it. But every answer only created new questions. A week later, a storm rolled in harder than any before. Rain slammed against the windows while the entire house groaned beneath powerful wind. Electricity didn't exist there anymore, so Nora used lanterns after dark. The shadows made the rooms feel alive. Near midnight, she heard it again. Thump, directly upstairs. This time followed by scraping. Slow, dragging. Nora grabbed the flashlight immediately. Her hands trembled while climbing the stairs. The hallway stood empty, but the locked room door was slightly open now, only an inch. The ticking inside sounded clearer. Tick, tick, tick. Nora pushed the door carefully. The room beyond was tiny. Bare walls. No furniture. No windows. Only a damaged wooden chair sitting alone in the center. And beneath the chair, fresh plaster dust. As if part of the wall behind it had recently shifted, her breathing became shallow. Slowly, she moved the chair aside. The wall looked normal at first. Then her flashlight caught something thin running vertically through the plaster. A seam. Very carefully, Nora knocked against the surface. Solid, solid, solid. Then, hollow. Her pulse exploded. She stared at the wall for several seconds without moving, because suddenly Walter's words returned to her clearly. Walls remember people. The next morning, Nora borrowed tools from an older fisherman named Elias, who lived nearly 12 miles down the coast. Elias warned her gently. That place keeps history buried for a reason, but he still handed her the hammer. Rain dripped softly outside, while Nora climbed back upstairs. For a long time, she just stared at the hollow section. Fear mixed strangely with anticipation. Then finally, she swung. Plaster cracked sharply. Dust burst into the air. Another strike. Then another, until a hidden wooden compartment appeared inside the wall. Nora's hand shook violently. Inside sat a rusted metal lockbox wrapped carefully in oilcloth, and beside it, a stack of journals tied with faded blue ribbon. For several seconds, she couldn't breathe. The lockbox opened using Walter's brass key. The moment it clicked open, Nora froze completely. Bundles of old cash, gold coins sealed in cloth packets, small velvet bags filled with jewelry. Not millions, but enough to change everything. Enough to rebuild a life. Tears filled her eyes instantly. But then she noticed something beneath the money. A letter, folded carefully, addressed simply to Nora. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped it. The handwriting belonged to Walter. She unfolded the paper slowly and read, "Nora, if you're reading this, then I failed to find the courage while I was alive. Years ago, 3 men hid this here after a shipwreck during a storm. We intended to report properly, but greed changes people slowly. Thomas wanted to return it. Harold wanted to sell it, and I stayed silent too long. By the time I understood what silence costs, Thomas was gone. Harold disappeared soon after. I never touched the money again. I hid it where nobody would find it, except you, because you are the only person I trusted to understand that survival means nothing if it costs your soul. Use this to build something honest, and forgive me for waiting so long. Walter." Nora lowered the letter slowly. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean, and for the first time since arriving, the house felt quiet, truly quiet. No ticking, no thumps, nothing, only waves below the cliffs. As if the house had finally released what it had been holding for decades. Nora didn't become rich overnight. Most of the valuables legally required investigation after she reported the discovery properly through the county office. Some items belonged to families connected to the old wreck. Others had no surviving claims at all. The process took months. At times, she regretted saying anything. She could have hidden it, taken everything. Nobody would have known. But Walter's letter stayed in her pocket constantly. Use this to build something honest. So she did. The legal portion eventually granted Nora enough money to restore the property and rebuild her life carefully, not extravagantly. Honestly, she repaired the roof herself first. Elias helped teach her how to reinforce storm windows. An older woman from town showed her how to remove mold safely from old walls. Little by little, the house changed. So did Nora. She stopped sleeping in the car, started cooking real meals again, started laughing sometimes without noticing. One afternoon, while cleaning Walter's journals, she discovered detailed notes about clock repair techniques, tiny diagrams, measurements, instructions. So she converted the downstairs room into a small repair workshop. At first, only a few people came, then more. Word spread slowly along the coast about the young woman restoring watches inside the old Lighthouse house. Tourists began stopping by during summer. Nora hung Walter's photograph near the fireplace, even the scratched one, especially that one, because now she understood something important. People carry shame for years hoping silence will bury it. But silence rarely buries anything. It only hides it inside walls. Sometimes the world abandons places the same way it abandons people. Too old, too damaged, too forgotten. But hidden value rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly beneath dust, inside broken homes, inside memories people are afraid to touch. Nora realized the treasure had never truly been the gold. Not completely. It was the truth, the chance to end a story differently than it began. Walter spent most of his life haunted by silence. Nora chose something else. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing the past, but refusing to pass its pain forward. 2 years later, storms still hit the cliffs hard each winter. The lighthouse still stood watching the sea, but the keeper's house no longer looked abandoned. Warm light glowed through the windows at night now. The smell of cedar would drifted from the chimney. And sometimes, when tourists asked Nora why she chose to live in such an isolated place, she smiled quietly before answering. Because some broken places still have something worth finding. Then she would glance toward the repaired wall upstairs. The wall that changed everything. Not because of the money hidden inside it, but because for the first time in her life, Nora no longer felt lost. She was 22 when she bought a forgotten house for $10. But what she really found there was a reason to stay alive long enough to rebuild herself. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more emotional mystery stories like this one. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever found something old, small, or forgotten that carried more meaning than anyone else understood? Sometimes the things people leave behind become the very things that save someone else.